Okay, so again, we're in Note Packet. I'm just going to back up here. We're in Note Packet 11. And based on this flowchart, we come into a program. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use the same program multiple times. So in other words, depending on how somebody enters our program, it's going to just do different code. So unlike, let's say, Visual Basic or probably any other programming language you've ever done, right? Like with Java or VB or Flash, you start up the program, it keeps running, right? You do stuff, and then when you're done, you click exit, and then the program stops running, correct? Well, this is completely different. This is a completely different scenario. Here, you're running the program 3, 4, 5 different times. You're starting and stopping it. In other words, you come into the program the first time. It's a GET request because you haven't been there before, so you follow this branch and you just show the form, and then as soon as you show the form, program terminates. So the lifetime of the program is very short. It's less than a second. Probably a lot less than a second, right? Whereas in any program you've ever written before, you know, Java, Flash, the program lifetime could be a minute. Okay, here it's very short. It comes in, does its stuff, gets the hell out. Now that form is being displayed at this point. So you come in here, you display the form, you exit, but that form is living in the person's browser. So it's the code that you've created that's living for a minute or two, but the program execution's done. All right. So anyway, you show them the form, they type in some stuff, they click submit, and instead of just doing that, let me just show you an example. And we're going to actually analyze the source code behind this pretty heavily today. I'm in week 7, and if you could just look up, I mean, or you can look at it on your own. Let me just pick. This is example 6.9 from the textbook. It's real simple. It asks for your name, right? So what we just did was, when I just accessed this, I just clicked the form itself, example 6-9.php. I just came in. It was a GET. I showed the form, and I exited. Boom, I'm done. Program's done executing, and this is what I got. Okay, so I type in my name. So now I type in D for my name, and I click submit. Now what happened was, this is called a self-submitting form. If you look at the source code, the form method is itself. So I'm submitting to myself, and the way that you do that is actually, there's a number of ways you can do that, but I've submitted this form to itself. So it comes back into the same program. But this time it was a post, so it goes the yes route, but the data wasn't valid. So it showed the same form, but it displayed some errors. And then done. How long did the program execute that time? A millisecond, if that's even being nanoseconds, right? As long as it takes those bits and bytes to fly around, it spits out a response and it's done with you. Wash his hands. Okay, but now I'm going to type in my real name, so Don, or whatever, yeah, and say hello. And finally it got a correct response. It said, hey, that name is long enough, and it followed the data valid path and it processed the form. Now what is the processing in this particular instance? It's just printing it out. It's not really doing anything, but it's still processing it. What could you do with it? You could show another form. You could save that information to a database. You could, do whatever you want. Okay, but that's the processing thing. So that's what it looks like. And let me kind of blast through these slides here. Okay, yeah. So here, and I think we've talked about this. So one way to handle this is to use this general approach. And I don't know how well this is showing here, so let me try to make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so we come into the main program, and it says if post submit check. So what this is saying is that there's a field in your form called submit check. and it's probably a hidden field. Okay, so you create a hidden field, you name it submit check, and you give it some true value, 1. Right? And if it sees this, it means, hey, wait a minute, they've clicked submit on the form already, so we go this route. If it's not there, we just show the form. Right? And show form is just a function. If the submit check field exists, it means they've posted. Check for errors using this validate form function. Return those results to form errors. And if there are any errors, it means this if statement's true and it shows the form again, but this time with errors. Otherwise, if there were no errors, we process the form. All right? And here's the input field, the submit check. It's just a hidden field, name, submit, check, value of 1. There's nothing godlike about that. You can make it any name you want. Hide it somewhere on your form. And at some point, I'm extremely lazy. I don't even bother with this. I just say, hey, if it's a post, I don't even bother. If any post, go to the next step.
Wouldn't you want that to be equals?
Where's that?
For the if.
Right here?
Yeah.
Actually, you don't.
Because isn't that just always true?
No, it's not. Can you give me an example? So we're referring to this line right here. Can you give me an example when that's not true? Okay, so what is validate form going to do? Well, actually, let me defer for a second. Let's go and talk about validate form. All right? And I think I have a bunch of examples here, but let me. This is only one strategy. Okay. So this is going to be the context of this chapter. This is chapter 6 of the textbook, and it's a very long chapter, but very important because of this is stuff you get fired over. You make a crappy website, you can probably fix it. But you make a crappy website, and then somehow you get hacked, bad data gets into the database and screws everything else up. That's when you get fired. So this is sort of life and death stuff right here. You got to make sure it's good. So. You got to validate, you got to make sure everything that should have been submitted was submitted, that it hasn't been tampered with. And then this is just a user interface, bullet number 2. And we'll talk about all of these. Okay, the validate form. Again, this is only one possible way to do it, but it's tested, it's tried, it works. Okay, so what you do is you create an empty array named errors in a validate form function. So errors is empty to start with, right? What's the truth value of an empty array? One more time, it's false. An empty array is false. An array that contains any elements is true, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to go into this validate form function, and if there are any errors, we're going to create an array. We're going to update the array. If we get through the entire validate form function and there are no errors, that means the array is still empty and it's false, which leads back to your question. If validate form is an empty array, it's false. It returns false to form errors, which is false. And so this is false. All right, so if there are no errors, validate form is an empty array. Form errors is an empty array. An empty array is false, so the if statement goes to the else block and we process.
So what's the difference of just saying if validation form?
Oh, because we want to be able to, actually this is incorrect. Sorry about that. Thank you. You're going to have to change this, folks. This should read show form. Can you cross this out in your notes? Show form, this should read, instead of errors, it should read form errors. Thanks. But we all had a pen out, didn't we? Didn't we talk about that last time? I guess we didn't. We'll try again next time. I might have a quiz. A 10-point quiz on whether you have your pen out at the beginning of class. Seth is still reaching for it.
I'll find it.
There you go. That should read $ form errors. Does that maybe that answer your question? So that's exactly why. So we don't have to call validate form twice. We just call it once, and then we just reuse the answers. Thank you. Okay, so here's an example right here. And this is the example 9. This is the same thing in example 9 that we just looked at. You've got a function, we call it validate form just for consistency in every program we write. Errors is equal to the empty array. We start out empty. If the string length of the post of name is less than 3, in other words, you're probably not going to, well, I mean, that's probably not reasonable. You probably should make it less than 2. But anyway, if we get a name that's less than 3 characters, what does this line do right here? Errors with a little blank subscript equals name needs to be 3 characters.
Errors of key 0 is...
Yeah, it'll create an element in that errors array. Name needs to be 3 characters. So now errors sub 0 is name needs to be 3 characters, and it returns this array back to the main program.
Is it 0 or 1? Is there the errors equals array?
There is no index there.
That's
There is no. Right. Now you don't have to do it this way. You could do errors sub name equals, right? It doesn't matter. It just depends on how you process it. Okay, but if there is an error, we call this a push. We push this element onto that array. Are you familiar with that terminology at all? Yeah. Pushing onto an array means you just put an element at the end. A pop means you pop it off. Okay? So you take popping an array pops the last element off. Pushing pushes an element onto the end. It's common across all languages. All right? If there is no error, validate form is false. Form errors is false in the main calling program, and so we go the process form. This is what I just described right here. Okay. So what does show form look like? Well, normally a function called show form would just display a form, right? However, look at this header line right there. Function show underscore form, parentheses, $errors equals an empty string. What does this line do? Well, you're defining a function, show form. Tell me about the errors equals blank.
It's assigning blank to errors, which is being
Not necessarily. It's assigning a blank to errors if what? If you don't pass anything to it, if you don't pass anything to show form, it assumes you want errors equals to a blank. If you do pass something to it, it'll take on whatever you pass to it, right? So what does that mean back here? Look at this. Okay, so in this instance right here, we're passing something to it. Down here, we're not, right? So the first time through, we're calling show form without an element, without an errors being passed to it, and it assumes you wanted a blank. Second, if there are errors, you pass the errors to the show form function, understanding that errors is an array. Okay, and if there are errors, meaning if errors is true, right? This is false also, right? So a blank is false, so it won't even bother with this if statement. But if it's true, it goes into this and prints out all your errors. And remember we talked about the implode function? This is just one way to display them as a list, an unordered list. You don't have to do it this way. You could run a for each loop and then print out the rest of the for. Okay. So it's just one way. Now, there's lots of other CSS sorts of stuff you can do, but this is bare bones HTML, pure HTML. Show the errors if there are any. And it shows them at the top of the form. Okay, so let's go to, okay, one more thing, validating data. And then I want to take a look at a bunch of examples. In the validate form function, you should check input data for validity. Is it supposed to be a number? Is it supposed to be a date? Can it be empty? Is it the correct length? This is an interesting one where your radio check or select options hacked. And remember we talked about hacking, but we'll hack them again today. Is your email address valid? And if not, show some errors. Okay. If so, if any of these is true, show the errors. If not, then you're cool. Then you go process it. We've already done this. You did this in your second project, right? Check to see if, you know, your email. And in fact, we talked with our on project 2. What did we do with email? We made sure that there was an @ symbol, right? So it was strpos something or other. Or better yet, why is this no good right here? If not post email. I'm trying to think why that's the case myself. Okay, I got it. No, maybe not. If not, in other words, if you didn't enter email, why is this no good?
It's not comparing or anything.
Well, let me show you. Let me see if I can. I'm not sure. Excuse me, I'm choking here again. Let me bring up PuTTY since it's easiest for me. This is week 7, and I think it's example 6-9.php. Okay, it looks ugly on here, but actually I have, let me hand out. There are three pages here. Yeah, can you take 3? There's example 6.9, int_val, and example 6.18. Just take one of each, all right? They should be in order, so top 3 and you should be able to pass it to the next. Okay, so let me see if I can. Actually, you know, I'm going to bring up Notepad+. Okay, you can probably see this a little bit better. Okay, here's my function validate form for example 6.9. You got them, Dan? And they should be all in order. 1, 2, 3. Just take the top 3. It should be 6.9, int_val, 6.18. Okay, so what I'm doing here is if $post my name equals trim post my name. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm just trimming it and reassigning it back to post. I don't like that strategy so much. I would just do it right down here. No, okay, I screwed this up. Oh, I didn't know that. Let me comment all this out. What if the only thing we were concerned about was a non-blank name. We don't care what's in the name as long as it's not blank, right? So one strategy could be if not $post name, right? My name in this case. In other words, if it's empty, right, it's false. So if it's not false, it's true. So if not post my name, in other words, if post my name is in fact empty, errors is equal to please enter a name. Okay, that's what I was trying to get at right there. Let me save this. I know I have to do something in the background here. Getting good at this. We'll bring up our web page. Okay, if I enter Don, it's still going to work. If I don't enter anything, if it's empty, it says, hey, you didn't enter a name. It's going to accept one character, right? So 3 is going to be fine. But what's the mistake that my mother's going to make and not know why she did it?
Spaces.
She's going to put a space in, not know that she did it, click submit, and it still passes through, right? So that's what I was trying to get at with this question here. You can't just check to see if the element exists because it could just be a string of blanks. And you don't want that to be valid. That's not a valid email. That's not a valid name. So trim it and then check the string length. It's probably a better approach. Good. This is actually the notes from chapter 3, I think, but we'll revisit it. If you want to check to see if something's an integer, take the post, convert it to an integer, convert it back to a string, and what that does is it takes something like if your post age was 23 apes, right? That's going to convert numerically to 23, isn't it? So int val of 23 apes is going to be 23. Convert it back to a string, it's the string 23, and the string 23 is not equal to 23 apes. So that will fail, and you'll get an error. All right? So string val int val or string val float val will check for integers or floating point numbers. It's kind of a useful technique. Check for number ranges, right? Check your age if it's less than 18 or greater than 65. This is just or statements. Okay, so if it's not, age must be between 18 and 65. Validating email, you could use this regular expression. I have a better way though. So, okay, and then PHP filters, which we'll get to in a second. So let's take a look at example 6-9. Oh, and I should probably change that back, right? Let me go back to the way it was, the correct way. Again, which is to trim it, check the string length. Okay, so the source code for 6.9. And some of it's going to roll off the right side of the screen. Okay, here we come in to the program. Check to see if it's a post. If it is, we're going to process the form, or check the form. If there are errors, we're going to show the form with the errors. Otherwise, we're going to process the form. If there are no errors, if we're coming in for the first time, we're just showing the form. The show form function, again with the errors as a blank if we're sending it without a parameter. If there are errors, print them out. Verify for yourself what that looks like. Otherwise, show the form. I want to show you one thing with this form right here. Notice we broke out of PHP. on line 31. And take a look at that line right there. Form method equals post. Action equals quotes. Remember this element right there? What does that do?
It's just a opening page, simple. Short
That's a quick print, right? Quick print, that's the PHP quick print. Just print out what's here inside there. And what is this? This is a server variable with the PHP self element. In other words, PHP self, server sub PHP self points to the current program that's running. So if my current program is whatever it is, it'll repost to itself. In fact, I think I have another program here. Let me just continue. I'll come back to that in a second. Here's your form, end form, cut back out into PHP, finish up your function. Here's your validate form function, which we talked about. Okay, we've done that. And that's it. So that's the extent of it. It's the basic logic is write two functions, show form and validate form. Actually, there's a process form also. Where's that? Oh, process form is later. Now, you're probably going to end up doing the most work in process form. But just getting to process form, you have to pay your dues. You have to do some nasty validation. Let me take a look at the next example. Example 6.1 is from the PHP book. What I did was I modified 6.1, and I wanted to show you some server variables. So let me just show you what it looks like. Your name, ask for your name. It doesn't do any validation, so let me put in Bob. And you say hello, and it says, hello, Bob. And then what you're getting here, these are all the server variables that you have accessible to you in the background. So each one of these is of the form $_server sub script URL. Script URI, HTTP host. So you can tell the host of your current server, in case you forgot that it's CSN Linux. But in your case, if you're web developing, you're going to have a different host name. Okay, so some things that you're going to want to know. One thing you might want to access is, where is this person coming from? Where on the internet? That's remote address, and that's always available to you. So, if you have somebody that's hacking at you, like somebody in China, from the Chinese government that's hacking at your program, trying to steal corporate secrets, you can find their IP address and block them out. Here's the PHP self that I was talking about. That's the access to your current script. It's the URL pointing to your current script. And notice it's only on your local server. You got request time, you got your script name, you got a request method, which is post.
Wasn't that the same as the server URL?
Yeah.
What they put up there?
There's redundancy, so some people
okay.
prefer to do one other, but I prefer PHP self. Okay, because you're not always guaranteed those other elements are there. And this is on Apache. On Microsoft's IIS, some of these variables might be different, but you're always guaranteed that PHP self is going to be there. That's it. Yeah. So these are the server elements. So $_ server sub remote address will return that. All right, so watch this. Okay, I'm 10.10.0.107. Let me just modify my script a little bit. This is 6.1-server. Okay, and 6.1, if array key exists. Array key exists is one of the 100 or so array functions available. You can look them up. But in this particular case, what do you suppose it does? It checks to see if my name is a key in the post array. So it's pretty self-evident, right? If it is, it means you've posted your form and you're printing out hello, right? Now watch this. I'm going to do a sub check. I'm going to say if $server, if I could spell, $_server, right? And it was remote _ADDR. Do you remember what that remote address was? My remote address? 10.10.0. Boy, you got good memory. And that's a string, right? So I should probably...
It's all tens.
Yeah. 10.10.0. I think that was my IP address. If that's the case, well, let's do a couple of things. Print. Oh, let's just do this. Print. No, go away. Actually, I don't need that. Else. Okay, so you see what we're doing. I'm checking that particular server variable for remote address. If it's mine, go away. Otherwise, welcome. So I'll save it. Now let's try it. Right, but if any of you guys try it, it'll work. Right, so that's an example of the server variables, and I think I addressed those at the end of the next note packet. So I'll show you some more detail on it. But I mean, this is a good example to take a look at. And I'm going to get rid of this if you don't mind. I've seen it. Questions?
Not yet.
Okay, good. Yeah, there's a lot to absorb, but it's all connected. It's a lot good. Int_val. There's a same function, same thing. It's just a little bit more, a few more things to check. And you tell me what's well. Obviously, the form is ugly, right? But you can spruce that up with CSS and all your HTML elements. You guys like doing that stuff. I don't like that stuff. Well, I kind of do. I wish I could do it better, but I prefer to code it, the stuff in the background. So enter your name, your age, your GPA. I'm not going to fill in anything right now. First of all, okay, watch. Which branch of that initial flowchart did we go? We went straight to show form, right? Because it's a get. We just did a get. And if we printed out all our server variables, we'd see that. In fact, what the hell? Let's do this. Let me bring it up. This is int_val. Before I even start my program, what if we just want to... how do we tell whether it's a get or a post? And I'll just do this as an H2 header, or H1 header. Server. Do you remember what that was? It was server request method, right? Server request method. So let me copy that.
Will that only tell us if it's post, or will that only tell?
It'll tell you what the request method was. So notice I started my string here, so I can just interpolate, and I shouldn't use single quotes here. Okay, so this is actually this is useful. Now you would never do this in real life, but but you can use it to check. So let's go back to server. What do we want? Examples int_val. Notice it's a get. Don't click anything now. We're just going to forget to fill in everything. Say hello. Now it's a post. Please correct these errors. And it lists all three of the errors. Isn't that nicer than listing them one at a time? It shows you all of them. And again, your fancy CSS people can figure out how to highlight the ones that are you know, with a red box around the ones that are okay. You can do that. You can handle that in your form error function, your validate function. Pass some other stuff back. But nitty gritty, please at least one character for your name, valid numerical age, valid decimal GPA. What's the code behind that? It's same as before, function validate form. But notice there are 3 distinct, unique if blocks. If this is the case, if your name is empty, append that error message to the errors array. And then you're done with that if statement, because this has nothing to do with this, right? They're 2 separate, distinct elements. So then you go on and check age, and if it's not a valid age, if you try to put in 23 apes, you're going to get an error message. And then it checks your GPA. And if you, first of all, if your GPA is not there, it says put something in. And then it goes so far as to say, hey, wait a minute, you can't have higher than a 4.0 or less than a 0. So it gives you a more explicit error. And then returns all of the errors, all of the different error messages based on this, right? So again, take a deep look at that validate function form, or that validate form function, and make sure you understand the processing in there. It's not hard, and it's a real good approach to solve this problem. Okay, so now I'm going to put in my name. I'm going to put in a valid GPA, 2.3, but I'm going to put in my 23 apes example. Right, 23 apes will convert when you do the you're going to trim it, convert it to an integer, right? It'll convert 23 apes to 23, convert it back to string. The string 23 is not equal to 23 apes. It'll fail. It'll give you an error message, right? Submit it. Please enter a valid name. So the error checking works, and you have to spend a lot of time making sure that your validation works. You don't want things to be, you don't want valid data to be flagged as invalid. Nothing drives me battier than bad error checking, where I'm typing the right stuff in, but it's still telling me there's an error. It happens more than I want to admit on forms, right? At which point, what do? You move on to another site. I'll buy it somewhere else. Yeah, somebody else wants my money more than you do. So
You just didn't want me to sign up for that account.
I guess you just didn't want me to sign up for that, right? Name, age, let's give a valid age, and a GPA of 5. Bad, right? All of it there. 1.2, 1.1. Okay, hello. And now you got to the processing part, which we that's after the break. When we come back after the break, we're gonna dive right into SQL database stuff and learn how to interact with a database, and then learn how to store stuff in that database. But we've got to make damn sure that our data is good before we get there. Yes, sir.
How do you stop it from resetting the form every time?
Yes. Okay. So I was going to ask you, what's the obvious problem with this? Is that it's from a GUI standpoint, it's horrible because it's not saving your data. All right. There's a terminology for that. It's called a sticky form. You want your forms to be sticky. You want the data to stick in the element. Now, it's easy with.
Did you make them equal to variables or something?
Yeah, it's easy with text fields, and it's easy with password fields, which you probably don't want password fields to be sticky anyway, right? They type in a bad password, you just want to clear it out and start again. It's much more complex with checkboxes, radio buttons. It's almost impossible with select buttons to keep those sticky. But we'll get to that. But let me just show you. Here's how you might go about doing it. Back in your form, your name, input type equals text, name equals my name. You could do this. Value, let me just make the name element sticky. Value equals single quote. I'm going to just break this out to the next line so I have some room. Oh, quick print, right? Value equals quick print post sub my name. Does that look right? Let me put this on the next line here. Okay, so your name, input type equals text. Name equals my name. Value equals post sub my name. If it's a get, if it's the first time through the function, what's the value of post sub my name?
Nothing.
It's nothing. It's not there. It doesn't exist because it's a get, right? So it's empty. If you've posted it and there's an error, what's the value of post my name? It's whatever you put in there. Yeah. You see? So it will work. And let's just check it. And again, I only did it with my name. So let me do blah, blah, blah as my name. I click say hello. There's an error. But notice it took blah, blah, blah as the post. And okay, so that's one way to do it. Now, as I said, it gets much more complex down the road with selects and other things, but that's a good start. So you could do that with age and GPA. For text boxes, it's pretty easy. And it even works with Joe's mom. If there's an apostrophe in there, that was actually sticky. And even with quotes, but look what happens with quotes. It didn't quite know what to do with that. So there is some magic involved here. You gotta, so Joe's parentheses or quote mom, like that, didn't stick very well. So there are some considerations. But for the most part, that'll work. Questions?
In a sense there, though, it is taking off the invalid part of the... So if you submit it now, it'd be valid.
If you view the source, too, see value equals Joe's.
Oh, okay.
The way to get around that is to...
You need to put the in the slash next to it.
well, actually, that's not going to work, but it's called HTML entities. A quote in HTML, how do you write a quote in HTML? If you want to display a quote, you have to use the quote ampersand quote.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I don't remember offhand.
Yeah, that's how you would do it. If you're, but again, we're just learning here. So okay, you kind of got the idea. So say hello, and then finally, if we got a valid GPA and everything, we go through. Okay, so take a look at the source code. And again, the validate form is the painful part. The form is actually pretty easy. This is going to be the same, very consistent. Again, you're going to eventually develop a style that you like, and so you're going to create your show form to be nicer or slicker or fancier, right? And the process form is the trivial part now, but that's the stuff that we focus on after the break with the databases. That's what we do. Right. Okay, so and I have something for to make stickiness easier. We'll tack that. We'll tack that at the end of class. Right now. Let's see, where do I want to go here? Let me get back to my notes. The filter functions. As of PHP 5.2, which you should all be at 5.2 hopefully, and if not, your service provider, whoever's providing PHP is way behind the times. They should get to 5.2. I think they're 5.4 now. But anyway, as of 5.2, filters are available in PHP. I'm going to assume that at this point they're available to you. And there are a number of filter functions. Here are two that we'll look at for now: filter input and filter var. And in fact, I would go so far as to say filter var is all you need. Right? And filter var, there are constants or flags. Filter validate int, which means, hey, make sure that they send me an integer. Filter validate email, make sure it's a valid email. filter sanitized string, weed out all the nastiness from my string. Okay, so, and we'll take a look at examples of how to use these, but I think these are self-evident. Check for a valid email, check for a valid integer, make sure it's a valid floating point decimal, make sure it's a valid URL. http www.mysite.com. And here's how you would use those. So, and this would just be in an if statement. If not, filter var and then some variable, filter validate email. So if you tried to pass Joe Mama in as a valid email, it's going to say, hey, it's not valid, right? But Joe Mama at genesee.edu, yeah, that's valid. So when it is valid, it returns the email address, which is true. So anything other than if it doesn't pass validation, it returns false, which is easy to put in your if statements. If it is valid, it returns true, and so you move on to the next thing. Okay, obviously Joe Mama at Genesee is not a valid integer, but 23 is. csnlinux.edu is a valid URL. It doesn't check to see if it's really there, it just checks to see if it conforms to standards. Whereas www.yahoo.com is not, because a URL has to start with either HTTP or HTTPS or something specifying the protocol. Okay, so these can all be tested in if statements. I'm not even going to bother. You can cross this out. Anything you can do with valid filter input, you can do with filter var, and it's one thing less to remember. And I would say the same for this. You could validate an integer range using the filter input or filter var function, but I think it might be easier to read just using an if statement like we did way back here. I think that reads easier. Just check it with an if statement. If GPA is less than 0 or greater than, okay? But if you really want to learn your filter var, filter input, you can do it right in here. Min range, max range. Check to see if it's between 0 and 9. But I don't know. I don't like it. And then validating select options is nasty business. Oh, actually, it's not. No. I take that back. Validating select options. Let me show you what I mean by this, right? So, we go to our, this is example 16.8. It's a real simple form. If you view the source code, well, actually, I gave it to you, right? 618. Actually, this is a different one. This is 618 no validate. You have an order. Print out Sesame Puffs, brown sugar cake. If you view the source, HTML, it looks like this. Right, there's my form action. Here's your order, select name equals order, and then a bunch of options, right? You know how to code that. End your select, submit, there's a hidden field, end form. Okay, but this is the heart of it, the select group. How did the select group get painted? We created a suites array up here, and we created it in global scope. And the suites is an array of 4 suites. And we're going to use it globally. Get down here to, I thought I changed this. Okay, well, it doesn't matter. In the main form, we're doing our form action, right? Starting the select group right there, select name equals order, and we're running through a loop, right? For each suites, global suites is the same as suites, right? For each array suites as choice, right? The choice, 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 choice. We're printing out option, then the choice, then close the option, then closing the select group. Okay, so it's a loop that's going to run through each choice and print it out. If let me get out of this. I can add to my suites array. Oh boy, I'm just... By the way, the author has interesting taste in food, so I'm going to sweet rice and meat. I'm going to give us a good American meal here. Good hearty, yeah. We don't care about the environment. We don't care about anything. Our health. Come on, somebody's got a good hearty American meal.
Cheeseburger and fries.
Cheeseburger and fries. Thank you.
And beer.
Cheeseburger and beer, and fries, and gravy. Good. That's an American. That's it's more like it. Okay. I just added it, and there it is. Okay, we didn't have to do anything. You click submit, and it says, looks like you like cheeseburger and beer and fries and gravy. How do we get that? That's the post element, right? Now, what's bad about this is that we just went into, let's take a look at our validate. Let me see, do I even have a function validate form. Oh, okay, I didn't validate anything. I just said, all right, cool, do whatever you want. I will accept anything you give me. Well, what's the problem with that? The problem is Firebug, hackers, and in honor of Charlene from 3 years ago, who was just, and boogers. She liked boogers. So boogers, we're going to stick in boogers and poop as our option. And what happened now? We got to this is important, even though it seems silly, we got to the processing part where we just processed boogers and poop. We just put boogers and poop into our database, right? The boss comes around and sees, wait a minute, somebody just ordered boogers and poop. Who coded this? Who allowed this to get? It was him. It was Seth. And so you're fired. All right, we can't have boogers and poop in our database. How do we fix that? Well, it's actually simpler than you might think. And that's example 16.8-6-18, which you have. I gave you the printout.
So using Firebugs like that, does that save boogers and poop to the array? Like if you access it again, will it be there, or
it doesn't?
They
they have no control over your over your PHP code.
All right.
They just have access to the HTML.
Oh. Okay.
Right. But if they change the HTML and your PHP code doesn't validate that,
yeah,
it's as good as them having access. And so they're going to do this, okay? Especially if there's a financial reason for doing this. So so here's 6-18, which does have a validate. And let's try the same thing. Bring up Firebug. I'm going to change sweet rice and meat to something a little bit nice. How about Krabby Patties? Okay, so I just modified the HTML on my end, submitted it, it says, hey, wait a minute, there's no Krabby Patties here. How do we do that? Well, one technique, and again, it depends on how you're going to do this, but one technique, and I'm assuming at this point you understand, okay, so here's my, array. Actually, sorry, that's no validate. I want 618 validate. Here's my array in global scope. Everything stays the same. We still print it out the same way we did before, using a for each loop. In validate form, in my select group, this is the line that takes care of it. And it looks complicated, but it's not. If not, what does the inArray function do? It checks to see if the choice is in the array. What's post order? It's the thing that they submitted. Krabby Patties, boogers and poop, or something valid. But essentially, if boogers and poop is not in the array that we've constructed in the beginning, there's an error. It says, wait a minute, they're screwing with us. Or, likewise, here's another way to use this. I retract that.
You can block their IP address right on the spot.
No, just if you're confident. What are the three conditions of being a good programmer? One of them is laziness. You want to write your programs lazy so you don't have to do work later on. Impatience. You want to get it done quickly. And hubris, overconfidence, self-confidence. There's no way they're going to hack. Go ahead and try and hack me. I'm not going to even bother blocking you because I know that my code is rock solid. So that's hubris right there. Say, you can't get to me. All right, so you check it right there. So and you can do that with radio groups. You can do that with checkbox groups. Okay. Good. All right, and that's it. So that's what this slide is getting at. And it depends on how you construct your select group, but you got the idea. And there we go. Okay, if you're going to do this sort of thing here, where you actually have a value that's different from the thing that's displaying, right? So this is going to show apples, but the thing that gets passed back is app. So you might have to construct your check a little bit different. You're going to be checking an array key as opposed to an array element, right? So if array key exists or not.
Well, couldn't they still change what it says?
What do you mean?
If they changed apple to boogers and poo, it would still work.
It'll still send app back, right?
And then so app would still be, it wouldn't validate.
But they can change the app too. But you're right. This is safer. Do it this way.
This is safer than the other one?
Yeah. Yep.
But can't they just, because it's not...
Well, I'd say either way is safe.
All right.
Either way. You still have to check, is the point.
Yeah.
There's no HTML that you can trust. What can you trust from the internet? Nothing. What's that?
Despite what Habermas says.
What, you can trust stuff from the internet?
No, that you can trust HTML5.
Oh, you absolutely cannot trust HTML5. And tell him he's wrong.
And
go up and just tell him today. Just say, don't even tell him what he's wrong about. Just say, Mr. Habermas, you're wrong.
All right. Do I get academic immunity from any?
Oh no, you're on your own, man.
That's gonna be World War III coming up.
Be careful you make him stuff.
No, but you can't trust it. Why can't you trust HTML5?
In the Explorer.
Yeah. You just run a non-HTML5 compliant browser and you do what you want. Yeah, so you can't trust anything. Okay? And for the most part, people are maybe they're running a bot in the background that's poking away at this stuff. So you can't trust HTML5. Okay, Jim Habermas, if you're listening right now, you can't trust HTML5. And I think same with radio group checkboxes, same idea, right? You check it the same way.
We could hack your email form and send them that.
So here's a suites array, and so input radio type equals radio name equals something. Oh, name is equal to SW1 suites 1, right? Notice my ID includes both SW1 and the value, and then the value. All right, and so you can check again if they submit something that's not in this list, they're out. Okay, and you can do the same with checkboxes also. And then finally, we're at the end here of class, but let me just show you this. We're ready to process our form, but you still have to be careful about form data that contains HTML or JavaScript. Okay, especially JavaScript, right? Have you heard of the concept of cross-site scripting attacks? It's tough to say. Cross-site scripting attacks. They're huge. They're very dangerous, right? And what happens is if somebody submits a form, right, it gets saved in your database, but there's HTML embedded in it, and that HTML contains JavaScript, God forbid. Well, that when you display that, you're going to be displaying JavaScript that the hacker has creatively constructed in such a way that it might redirect you to another site without your knowing, or it might load stuff from another site, or etc. So that's a cross-site scripting attack, and it's real simple to get rid of it. The simplest way is to use this function right here, strip tags. And anything that's an HTML that gets submitted gets stripped out of the request. So let me just show you. I think I have one more example for this. And sorry for not letting you guys do anything today, but this is important. Okay, so where's danger? I got danger.php. Okay, this program shows the danger of outputting a form data without cleansing it. Enter font size equals 10 into the box. Okay, so standard stuff, but let me just go right to it. Danger. Okay, you type in blah blah blah, click submit. Here's some stuff, then your post, and then some other stuff. Okay, what if we do this? Now that's been saved into your database, and then you're displaying it somewhere else. And I know this is not harmful, right? It's just annoying, but it can be harmful if there's JavaScript in there, right? And we're going to do JavaScript at the end of the semester, where you can, you'll be able to see this. But that's so. And then it used to be. I don't know if you can do it anymore, but we used to do font face. I don't think it's going to work anymore. Symbol. Yeah.
Quotes on it?
Maybe. Yeah, it used to work great, but now it's not. Yeah, so they used to work where it would change everything to, gibberish, right? But you can change the font, and it is font face, right? So, yeah, this used to work also, which I don't think it's going to. Oh! Okay, so what is a valid font? Wingdings. Wingdings. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, let's try. I'm not sure if it's going to work. Shoot, what's
It
valid?
depends on what's actually on
On your, yeah,
on
so,
your computer.
okay, so,
Try
anyway.
new runners.
That's the most, right, the most annoying one. No, okay, but you get the point. Then you can play around with stuff. Okay, here's a good one though. Font, let's make it font color equals
White.
It's like a secret message
It's
that we
hidden.
only know about.
your whole page just turned white.
I'm trying
No,
to
it's like, everybody goes, where's all the stuff? Well, somebody stuck white. Somebody stuck poop into your website. Okay, and everything's stored in a database now, so it's tough to fish that out. Well, what's the solution? One solution is no danger.php, which instead of just showing the form, the process form, anything that you're going to display, anything that you're going to save in your database, you can either use HTML entities or strip tags. Now, what's strip tags? Okay, yeah, my name too is strip tags. My name is HTML entities. Strip tags literally just rips out anything in an HTML tag. HTML entities changes the HTML to that safe code behind it, like the NBSP, non-breaking space or whatever. Okay, so if we look at this, let's go and do no danger. Okay, so if you just type in my name, it just shows my name. It doesn't strip anything, right? Let's do
We'll try to comment and say it again.
font color equals FFF. If I can type. Let me do this.
I think you can type in white too.
I could type in white. This is more fun. That's HTML entities. Notice it presents it, but if you view the source, it's bad. That's what it looks like. Less than, font color equals, greater than. So there's no danger there. Or it'll just get rid of it. So using strip tags. And with strip tags, I don't think it takes out the stuff in between the tags. So let me try this. Dude, and then slash font. I think dude will still show up in both. Yes. So it just takes out this part and this part, the strip tags. But again, you want to make sure you're doing that. Okay, I've thrown a lot at you today. Oh, and we're done. So, let me stop the recording.